Hey everybody, welcome to part 4 of the Absolute Beginner's Guide to using Blender 2.8 to make models for 3D printing. Except, is that really true? Can you still consider yourself only as an absolute beginner? You've learned so much so far. You've learned how to navigate the 3D view, to pan it around and move it around so that you can look at different parts of it, which is important because we're using 2D tools, a flat screen and a 2D mouse to try and navigate a 3D space. So I hope you're getting really good at just hitting that middle mouse button, swinging your view around anytime you need to see things, or if you don't have that available, using the number pad, or if you don't have that available, using the icon. Because we've learned also that there's multiple ways to do the same thing in Blender, and I'll teach you one way, but if you start using it that way and either can't or don't like to do it the way that I do it, you don't have to do it that way. Blender gives you options, and I think that that is fantastic. We've also learned how to add objects to a scene, move them around in constraining that movement to only one direction or plane. We've learned to scale it up and down and only scale it in certain directions. We've learned to rotate it as well and the effect the constraining has on that. And we've learned that we can rotate it in any view and move it in any view, but stick it to whichever way that we want. You're actually getting really good at Blender. Now, I hope that you did the homework last time to make a snowman because we're going to need that model in just a little bit. But I want to show you the homework of some of your fellow students first. So this really cool snowman was made by Electric Guy, and I featured him in the video earlier this week as well in the What You Make 'em part. It's a simple snowman, a couple of icospheres, cones for the arms, and yet it's definitely a snowman. Now I do see a little a little error here. It looks like he added a circle to the scene and didn't know what to do with it, and it's just kind of sticking out of the head of the snowman. But you know what? That's okay. I give you permission to not know what you're doing once in a while, to make mistakes, and even to leave those mistakes in. They're not hurting anything, and if it is, we'll figure out how to get rid of it. But it's great. This is a learning experience in every way, and I absolutely love it. This one was created by Nick G, I think his name was, and look at the absolute beautiful detail in it. It's similar to the other one, but with more cylinders for the arms to put more detail. But look at this smile. This is the part that really gets my attention. How did he do that? It looks to me like he used a torus, that donut shape that's in Blender, turned it sideways and just had it peeking out of the bottom of the head. So the rest of the torus is inside the head there, and I wonder if Nick had problems with it peeking out in the wrong places and getting that angle right. It looks like he did a fantastic job with it. Good job. It looks like he also used one of those toruses for the scarf, but because he couldn't cut it off, because the whole cylinder is there, or the whole torus is there, he added a couple of cylinders at the bottom to look like a scarf. And he also used cylinders for the hat. Isn't that cool? That's a great snowman. Let me show you mine. Now, my snowman also has a hat on it. I put a little brim on it. My arms are much more simple than Nick's. And yeah, I put a couple of buttons on there as well. This is my snowman. I also put a cube underneath the snowman right here. And we'll talk about why I did that in just a little bit. Now, there are other things that I want to teach you. For instance, you might have discovered in this one thing that I saw. I made my arms too thin. I want to make my arms thicker. Well, if I hit scale, it'll make it bigger, but I don't want it to be taller. I just want it to be thicker. So what do? Shift C? But if I hit Shift C, it still is only making it bigger. And so frustrating. So I hit Z again and now it's just making it longer. What's happening? And I get confused and frustrated and shut it off and get angry. Now, if you ran into this, I do want to add this information to you later, but I'll give you just a little hint of what's going on. Every object in Blender has global information and personal local information. And this cylinder here, because it's tilted at a weird angle, I can't okay, if I hit scale and hit Z, it's not going to just scale it up and down in Z. You'd think that it would, it should, but it's not. It's refusing to do that because doing that would skew it, and it wouldn't locally be any specific. You can't scale in a weird direction. However, if I hit Z a second time while I'm doing this and having its motion constrained in Z, if I hit Z a second time, now it's only going up and down in the cylinder's specific Z. The cylinder has a specific Z. And yeah, that I can do. So if I wanted it to get thicker, I could hit Shift Z and, well, no, Shift Z again. No, Shift Z again. Oh wait, now it's just getting thicker. Let me cancel the movement and do this clean. Scale S, Shift Z. Oh no, Shift Z again. Local Shift Z, and it's making it thicker. So that's how we could make our snowman's arms thicker after we've already rotated them. You constrain it twice. We'll talk more about that in the future, but for now, like I said, this is separate bodies, a separate icosphere for the body and head, separate cylinders for the arms, separate everything. And if you try to print this, these overlapping objects can be a problem, and so we need to learn about the Boolean modifier. Now, I'm going to create a new scene. So I'm going to actually use the hotkey for this, Control N, General. Don't save, I don't want my one thick arm to be saved. Here we've got our new scene. Hit A to select everything, and then I'm going to hit X to delete it. There we go. And now I'm actually, we had a cube in there. I'm going to hit Shift A to add another cube back in. But I'm also going to hit Shift A and add an UV sphere. And then I'm going to take that UV sphere and I'm going to move it with G so that it's covering up one corner of the sphere there. Okay? Now, with it covering up just the corner of the sphere, and I hope that you're taking advantage of your tools for rotating your view and zooming in on it, be sure to orbit around your view. But with that sphere covering up one of those corners, it can be frustrating because the corner is still there, but I can't see it. And I want to be able to see it. So I'm going to teach you a couple of tools now for manipulating the view. One thing that we can do is we can hide objects that we don't want to see. So if I click on the sphere and I press and I hide it, there's a couple of ways to hide it. Under view, there is it view or is it object? It's object. I don't actually do this very often. Show and hide, and then there it is, hide selected. And you notice that that's H. So I can click that and haha, now the sphere is hidden. Now I want to unhide it. Oh, I can't unhide it because I can't select it. It's hidden. Well, let's go back. Object, show hide, show hidden objects is Alt H. Ah, I get it. Alt H puts everything back. And there's another interesting option here. Under show hide, there is hide unselected. So I can click the object that I want to see, hit Shift H, everything else is hidden but that object. And then if I hit Alt H, it brings everything back. So that's pretty cool. So hiding and showing objects. Now I do also want to point out the outliner. Do you remember me pointing that out? Right over here in the upper right hand side of your window. Not just the 3D view, but of the whole entire window. There's a list of every object that we have. And do you see that eyeball icon next to them? Click that eyeball icon on the sphere line and watch the sphere disappear. Click the eyeball icon and it reappears. So now you know all the ways that we can hide objects. But there's another cool thing that we could do. And maybe you ran into this before but didn't know what you had done. Let me show it to you. In the upper right hand side of the 3D view, there are four icons that look kind of like globes in different configurations. These four icons represent wireframe mode, solid view, which is what we're looking at right now. It's called look dev mode, which is kind of like halfway between solid and rendered view. The next one is rendered view. And then there's a drop down for shading, which actually has a lot of really cool stuff that we can check out another time. I am going to click the wireframe icon up here. And when you click on that, take a look at what happens to your view. All of your objects just kind of become skeletons of themselves. You can see right through them. Now, this view can sometimes be confusing because depending on how you're looking at things, you might think that they're overlapping. They might just be behind each other. You might not be sure what's in front and what's in back. I use wireframe mode a lot, but I also use it sparingly. I'll jump into wireframe mode to do what I need to do, and then I'll jump back out into solid mode. Now here's another way to jump into solid mode. Hotkeys. On your keyboard, hit Z. And notice around your mouse pops up this really cool, we call this a radial menu. If you move your mouse a little bit to the right and then click, we'll be back to solid mode. Try it again, hit Z and move your mouse to the left to go to wireframe. Hit Z, move your mouse to the right to get to solid mode. Isn't that kind of cool? Those radial menus are neat. And if you play with this and try the other views, you might see, well, render doesn't help me at all. That's because we don't have any lights or a camera in the scene. And look dev looks a lot like solid mode right now. We'll get into look dev in just a little bit, but there you go. Let's put it back in solid. Now there is something else that you can do. Click off of the object, select nothing, and up top of your view there where we've got those four icons, there is another icon right on it called Show X-ray. Click that one. And notice how now everything is kind of semi-transparent, but still opaque. This, I think, is a really cool mode, but it can be confusing with lots of objects on the scene right there. Just know that it's available to you. And just like with wireframe mode, I use this X-ray mode sparingly. All right, click on the cube. I want to teach you a trick of how to combine two objects into one. And to do that, we're going to start using modifiers. Modifiers are really, really cool. Modifiers allow you to change an object without altering its underlying geometry. Think of it a bit like Think of it a bit like a funhouse mirror. When you look through the funhouse mirror, everything looks distorted and changed in some clever way. But the things that you're looking at, usually yourself, isn't actually changed. And if you move away the mirror, it's it's back to normal. Well, imagine that, but you're on the other side of the mirror. The changes that that funhouse mirror is making is actually making a change until you turn it off. Yeah, the analogy kind of breaks down there, but the basic idea is that modifiers don't break your object, but it does change the shape of it in a predictable way. And we're going to be using a modifier today called Boolean. Now, where do we find these modifiers? Well, they're right here in the properties panel. On the right hand side of your view underneath the outliner, this whole panel right here is called the properties panel, and it consists of a lot of tabs with a lot of information on them. The first tab up top is called context, which is specific to the program. The next batch of tabs are all related to rendering and the world that we're looking at here. And then the tabs underneath that are related to the object. The first tab on top looks kind of like an orange square. It's our context for the object. We can change the name of the object. Ooh, that would be useful. We'll play with that later. And then the next one down, the kind of blue wrench, is our modifiers. Aha, this is what we're looking for. Click on that blue wrench and you'll notice that our modifiers tab is pretty much empty right now. So we're going to have to add a modifier. So let's do that by clicking add modifier and find the, wow, look at all these modifiers. So many of them. Wow. We'll get to play with some of these, but for now, I want you to find the Boolean modifier, which is on the second row from the left and third one down, and click it. Now the Boolean modifier is added to our cube, but it's not actually doing anything. Do you see the red under the Boolean modifier name right there? That's because it is missing some important information. I told you the Boolean modifier takes two objects and changes them, and it only has the one object that we've got it on. We need to assign it a second object. Well, let's take a look at this. Boolean modifier apply and copy buttons right there. We don't need those right now, but we'll play with those later. Below that, there's the operation. Let's click that operation drop down and we'll see that we have intersect, union, and difference. If you know mathematics, if you know set mathematics, these terms might make sense to you already, but if you don't, I don't blame you for being confused about them. We'll go through each one of these in turn, but just click on difference. We'll leave it on that one. And then next to that is an object menu. All right, let's click that. Choose the sphere. And well, if you're in solid view, you might not be able to see what's going on. So let's drop it to, well, how do we want to do this? There's a couple of ways that we could do this. We could hide the sphere. We could go to wireframe mode. We could do it with the X-ray mode. You know what? I'm going to use a fourth option that I haven't told you about. If you go to, or if you on your keypad, let me see if I can find it real fast. Local view is what I'm looking for. There it is. So under the view menu, it says local view and you say toggle local view. With just the cube selected, numpad slash. You see that that's what that one is, numpad slash. So I'm going to toggle local view. And look at this. Local view is a bit like hiding all the other objects, except not, because we can just pop in and out of local view with one key. Now, quite frankly, it's very similar to hiding them all, and we might as well just use the hide function, but I'm used to using this local view. But check it out. Now that we are in the local view, we can see that the cube now has that sphere differenced out of it, a big old hole in there. I'm going to hit numpad slash. Now we're back to our main scene. I'm going to hit numpad slash again. Now we're back to the local view. Now that we're looking at this, we can alter these settings on the modifier without breaking anything, and we can see what the different settings do. So let's do that right now. Let's go back to the modifier panel here. Let's look at difference, pull it down, and change it to union. Ho, well, now it looks like the sphere came back. Except if we turn on X-ray mode, or if we go into wireframe mode, either way, we can see that, and it's more clear in wireframe mode. So hit Z and go to wireframe mode. But we can see that where the sphere and where the cube intersect each other, those two have merged together and the geometry on the inside is gone. This is what we wanted to do. We don't want overlapping geometry. We want just kind of the outside shell geometry. So it looks like we're going to want to do union. But we haven't finished with the Boolean modifier. So let's hit Z and go back to solid mode. I'm going to turn off X-ray mode as well. And let's change to our last setting, intersect. So in the Boolean modifier, switch it from union to intersect. Oh, isn't this interesting? Now it just becomes the space where the cube and the sphere are overlapping. It's just that part. Everything else is gone. I could think of some uses for that. That's pretty cool. I'm going to pop out of local mode, and now that cube looks awful funny. I'm going to switch it over to union since we decided that's what we wanted. And we can still see the sphere here, so I'm going to hide it. I'm going to go up to the outliner view. I'm going to click the eye icon on the sphere to hide it. Now I'm looking at our Boolean joined cube and sphere. So that's pretty cool. You know, we can Boolean together tons and tons of objects. Here, let me show you. I'm going to hit Shift A. I'm going to add a cylinder, and I'm going to scale this cylinder up so it sticks through. So scale it up in the Z, so SZ, and then move it up and click it. And then I'm going to scale it down in the X and Y. So scale Shift Z and make it smaller. And I'm going to move it with G so that it goes a little bit over the sphere. And I'm going to have to scale it up into Z again just so that it goes all the way through, because clicking on the cube here, I'm going to add another modifier in the modifiers tab here, choose Boolean, and in this second Boolean modifier, I'm going to difference out the cylinder. And I'm going to really quickly hide the cylinder in the outliner view by clicking on the eye icon. Notice how it's like we've made a bead here. In fact, this would be a pretty good way to make beads, don't you think? We've taken the cube, we've taken the sphere, and we've taken the cylinder and put it right through it. Pretty cool. However, what if we did that in a different order? What if we did the differencing of the cylinder before we union the sphere on? And fortunately, right here in the properties panel, we can change the order of these operators. Do you see how there's a little up arrow and down arrow at the top of the individual modifiers? You can take the first Boolean modifier, hit the down arrow, and now they've switched orders. And look at what happened. If you orbit your view around, you'll see we took the hole out of the cylinder first, and then we added the sphere to it. And if you want to see this happening one at a time, in those modifiers right there, there are some blue buttons. Now, the blue button on the left looks like a camera, and that means apply this modifier, use this modifier when we are doing a render. Now, again, we don't do rendering very often because we're just worried about the modeling and the solid surface of it. So that button doesn't matter to us. The next one over says, use this when you are displaying it on the screen. Well, turn off that second button on the second modifier and then turn it off on the first modifier. Notice we're back to the original cube. I said it didn't destroy the cube. It's still there. The modifiers just kind of change it, and we can layer them too. Click the display button on the first modifier to see the cylinder be added. Then click the display modifier on the second, or display button on the second modifier to make that sphere appear. How cool is that? We can see it coming in order. I'm going to switch the order again. I'm going to click down on the first modifier, and now we got our hole back through it. And then I'm going to turn them off in order and turn them back on in order so that I can see them working and how they work. That's pretty cool. So the Boolean modifier is just the first of many modifiers that we are going to learn to use and play with. But I want you to go back and reload your snowman now. Now that we've learned about the Boolean modifier, we're going to take that snowman and we're going to make it into one solid mesh. So I'm going to go up to File, and I'm going to use my Open Recent to pull back up my snowman file. Discard these changes. We've been playing with the space, but we got everything we need. Okay, now we've got our snowman, but it's still separate objects. We need them to be kind of meshed together into one big object. But we need one of the objects to do this with. Which one are we going to do? Now, I'm actually, for your benefit, I'm going to grab the cube on the bottom and I'm going to delete it because you probably don't have a cube like that in your scene. But we'll add a cube in just a bit. But first, I'm going to grab the sphere on the bottom of my snowman and I'm going to use add modifier, Boolean. I'm going to change it from difference to union. And I'm going to add, ooh, which one of these objects? I'm not sure. There's so many of them. I could choose one at random, but Blender gives us a really cool too. Do you see that little eyedropper icon in the object menu? Click that, and then in your 3D view, come over here and click on the second icosphere. Boop! It added it perfectly. This little tool there for adding or for picking things on the screen is a great way to set up your modifier. Now we need to add another Boolean modifier, and I'm going to eyedropper the third sphere. Boop. Wait, what did I do? Oh, I've didn't forgot to set it. It says difference. I need to set it to union. There we go. Now it's all on there. I'm going to hit what was it? Shift H to hide everything but that guy. Hey, there's my union snowman, and then I'm going to hit Alt H to bring everything back. Ooh, I see why we don't want to use local, or why we want to use local mode sometimes. All right, because when we hit Shift H, it selects everything, but that's all right. It's working just fine. Now, you might think hitting add modifier, Boolean, changing from difference to union, and then choosing the object is cumbersome, and that's only because it is. But remember, we've got those copy and apply buttons. Before you add the object that you're going to use, hit copy and hit it again and again and again and again and again and again. And now we've got copied a bunch of Boolean modifiers already set up to union, and we can start adding the objects that we want. I'll add the arm, and then the next one I'll add another arm, and I will add the nose and the eyes. And we'll continue adding objects to this until it's all done. I'm going to leave it to you for homework to finish building your snowman, but I wanted to show you about that cube at the bottom. Notice how our snowman has a rounded bottom. And if you know anything about 3D printing, you know that rounded bottoms do not make for good prints. Now, you could just as well take your object and drop it below the build plate so that it gets a flat bottom. But why when we could just use a Boolean modifier? Do you remember the difference modifier? We just need something flat to difference out. So I'm going to Shift A, add a cube. I'm going to scale it up into Shift Z so it's wide and long, and then I'm going to hit G and Z and move it down till it's about on the ground plane where I want it. Then I'm going to grab that snowman, and I'm going to put this as the very, very last modifier. Change it from union back to difference and take out that floor cube. Now, if we hide everything else, we'll see that our snowman has a flat bottom. And that's pretty cool. Now, I do have a confession to make. I'm going to hit Alt H to bring everything back, and I'm going to switch my view to look dev mode. I put color on my snowman. Now, I haven't shown you guys how to put color in, but I will definitely cover that in a future lesson. But I did that so that I could print my snowman on the DaVinci Color, and let me show you that print right now. There we go. What do you guys think of my full color snowman? You might notice that there is an interesting little ring around the third button or the first button on the top. That's actually coming from the hat. When the hat printed, it applied color to it, but that color kind of sprayed down. And in fact, I got some nasty overhang on the hat because I refused to turn on supports when I should have. But that's all right. That's my snowman printed out on the DaVinci Color. I think it looks pretty good. And if you guys in the future have color models that you want to, you want me to check out, hey, I love checking out the work of my students. I might even print it out for you. Uh, you know, might be fun. Okay, your homework is to finish with your snowman, to keep adding Booleaning everything together until you have one mesh. Now, when you have that one mesh, the last thing you need to do is export an STL. So how do we export this snowman as an STL? Well, let me show you. We go to File, Export, STL. Choose a now before you choose. You have to choose a place to save it. But before you hit go on that export, there are some options down here we need to check. It's specifically selection only. If you don't check that, it will try and export your Boolean object and all the objects that went into it, even if it can't see them right now. If they're in the scene, they will be exported through the export here if you do not click selection only. So click selection only, hit export STL, and there you go. You can now go get that STL and print it out on your 3D printer. So that's your homework. Make an STL of your first snowman model that you've made. And then when you're done with that, feel free to try making new objects with Blender. You now have a considerable arsenal of tools for making 3D objects. However, Blender is capable of a lot more. It's capable of taking those objects and manipulating them in discrete ways. The modifiers that we can use are fantastic, and there's a lot more that we can do here. So This series is not over. I will see you again next week and we will talk more about it. But we're going to take a quick break next week because next week we're going to talk about how we can set up Blender, customize it to be even better for what we're doing so that going forward we can move faster at move faster both in these lessons and in your workflow. You can be a more efficient Blender user if you just change a couple of small settings. So look forward to doing that next week. I look forward to seeing what you guys do. I hope that you guys will contact me on social media, on my Discord channel. All the links are in the description if you are doing cool stuff. And just the comment section of this video. If this is helping you, let me know. But as always, I want to remind you safety first because I care about you. And I will see you next time.